Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Lewis Adam. I'm your chairman for this evening. Some housekeeping just to start with. We don't have a fire alarm planned, so if it does go off, please make an orderly exit, and the muster point is the car park by the pub across the road. This is a meeting in public, not a public meeting, so only those registered to speak are permitted to do so. I'll call the appropriate people up at the correct time and give you further instructions from there. And the meeting will be recorded and broadcast on our website and YouTube. Just to introduce the top table, from Community Services is Kira Keller. Our solicitor this evening is Amy Shipley. Our planning manager is Richard Gardner, and then our planning officers are Charlotte Dix, Stuart McIver and Paul Thompson. And Richard, I believe you have a statement prepared.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just to confirm that tonight my role is to provide impartial advice and to assist members in their decision taking. Just to note, Mr. Chairman, we've still got a problem with the internet, so we might have to swap machines before the first presentation.
Okay. Duly noted. Thank you. I'm sure people will manage to bear with us. Okay, we'll move on then to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillors Harding, Holmes, Padgham and Passingham, with Councillor Parker as substitute.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, item 2, disclosures of interest. I'll start just to say item 4, which is application 21/02330/OUT. I was the previous ward member for this, for Stockton, which encompasses this site, and I commented on it and had involvement at the time. For that reason, I'll be stepping down from the committee for that item and returning later, and my vice chair will take the helm. Councillor Scorer.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 5 on the agenda, 24/01610/full. I'm a ward member, but I've made no representation. I come to the meeting with a clear and open mind, Chair.
Lovely, thank you very much. Any further disclosures? No? Okay. Item 3, minutes. We have to confirm the minutes for the meetings held on the 28th of August. Everybody had an opportunity to review? Agreed. Thank you very much. And the 11th of September. Yes, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I draw your attention on page 5, minute 211? The third item looks not to be complete.
Yes, duly noted. It's with regards the ward member for that item.
What the interest is that was disclosed, I know not, and it doesn't record it.
It's just that the Councillor Keithley is the ward member for that item.
It would help if it said so.
It is on the second line of that paragraph.
That's not the way I read it.
Okay. No,
There were two separate items, and it looks as if the second one is incomplete. If that's the explanation, I accept it, but it could have been better stated.
okay. Noted. Thank you for that comment. Otherwise, we're happy for these minutes to be approved? Yep. Agreed. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And next item is item 4, for which I'm stepping down. So I'll invite Councillor Eden to take the chair.
Okay, thank you. So the first application this evening is 21023330/OUT, land west of Jubilee Fields, Stockton. Our presenting officer is Charlotte Dick, so whenever you're ready, please take it away.
Thank you, Chair. The site is indicated on the map by the black circle. The application site is located to the south of the village of Stockton in the open countryside. This slide shows the application site edged in red. It's an open field with a Scouts hut on the eastern part of the site. The rear gardens of the houses on St Michael's Crescent are visible to the north, and the existing recreation ground is to the west of the site. Jubilee Fields is situated to the east. The green circles on the map indicate the trees with a TPO, as well as a group of trees with a TPO on the western boundary of the site. This is an outline application for demolition and resiting of the Scout hut, along with up to 13 new self and custom build dwellings. This slide shows the revised indicative site plan and has been received within the last week, showing the stopping up of the existing Scout hut access on the northeast part of the site. This slide shows the developable areas and plot boundaries for the 13 dwellings on the southern part of the site, with a drainage basin to the east. The indicative location for the Scout hut and associated landscaping is to the north of the site, and vehicular access would now be from Jubilee Fields for both the Scout hut and the 13 dwellings. This slide shows an aerial view of the site and the surrounding area, with an insert showing the proposed scheme. The existing Scout hut and associated hardstanding are located on the eastern side of the site, where you can see the label here. You can also see the existing trees and vegetation along the boundaries of the site, the surrounding dwellings, and the recreation ground to the west. As shown by the map with the arrow in the corner of the slide, this photo is taken to show the proposed access from Jubilee Fields. You can see number 18 Jubilee Fields on the right-hand side of the photo. This photo is taken slightly closer to the proposed access, still showing number 18 Jubilee Fields. This more closely shows the ash tree, known as T22. The impact of the temporary construction access on this tree is the outstanding issue noted in the committee report. So this slide shows a close-up of the existing site plan on the left-hand side, with the yellow arrow indicating the distance between the existing Scout hut and the site edged red, the boundary. So this shows the position that the temporary construction access would take into the site to allow the existing Scout hut to be retained throughout the work. The yellow arrow on the photo to the right-hand side indicates the same distance. And you can see the ash tree, which is just to the right-hand side of that yellow arrow. So the insert map shows that this photo is taken from close to the existing Scout hut, which you can see just on the left-hand side of the photo. So we're now facing towards the southwestern boundary, and the trees that you can see are the edge of the site. This photo is taken panning around from a similar location to show the northwestern boundary of the site, indicated by the insert map again. This group of trees in the landscape buffer is the subject of a group TPO. Again, as shown by the arrow, this photo is taken panning around, now facing the rear gardens and rear boundaries of the dwellings on St Michael's Crescent. The existing Scout hut access is just to the right of the photo. So this photo is taken from within the site, looking back to the existing Scout hut, where the access would be sited behind the Scout hut and next to the dwellings that you can just see in the background. So just to clarify, there are updates within the update sheet, and officer recommendation is to grant the application subject to the recommendations, conditions and notes on pages 35 to 37 of the agenda, as well as the additional line in the section 106 part of the recommendation and additional note, which are both included within the update sheet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, so we'll call forward our first speaker for the evening. That's Councillor Howard Collison from Stockton Parish Council. If you'd like to make your way forward to the table. Good evening. Okay, so you'll have 3 minutes for your presentation. You clearly know where the button is already, so I'll give you a 30-second warning whenever, and whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thank you. Mr Chairman, on behalf of Stockton Parish Council, I presented their full support for this application when this matter was first considered by your committee last year. But I will briefly recap its reasons for its support. Firstly, the developers of this site also own the adjacent field that has been used since the 1960s as a children's playing field, and this is in accordance with their grandmother's specific wishes. The Parish Council has worked closely with developers for the last 10 years or so over this application on the understanding that they will grant the Parish Council a 999-year lease at a peppercorn rent for the playing field, guaranteeing its future in perpetuity. The importance of this security of tenure is demonstrated by the fact that a new enthusiastic playing fields committee has been able to secure over £40,000 in grant funding to commence a programme of refurbishment of the play facilities. A long-term lease will allow more long-term planning and funding. The second reason relates to the variety of housing styles in our village. Stockton has a limited range of housing styles, firstly due to its history as a cement village, when Nelson's built 4 rows of terraced houses in the late 1800s. And then secondly, in the last 40 years, we've seen 4 or 5 identikit estates from the large national house building companies. During the period of the core strategy, there have only been 6 or 7 that were one-off homes that were effectively self-built, where the families bought the land and built their homes to their own design. There is a distinct lack of variety across the village, and the development will bring a different type of occupant with their own distinctive approach to house design that will widen the appearance of the village. The Parish Council's current response to the current consultation on the South Warwickshire local plan is to support further housing development as long as there is some obligation to provide appreciable benefits to our community, something that's been sadly lacking in recent developments. I would therefore urge the committee to follow the planning officer's recommendation and grant approval for the application.
Thank you very much. Well within your time. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Collison? Right? No? Thank you very much for your contribution. Okay, so moving on, our next speakers are John Akers and Joe Brough. I may have said that wrong, so I apologise in advance if you'd like to make your way forward. Okay, got it right. Fantastic. There's only 2 people. We've only got 2 people registered to speak here, John Akers and Joe Brough. So I'm not sure who's who. Okay, is that okay? Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, are you splitting your time, or is just one of you speaking? Okay, and do you want half and half?
No, I'm going to speak for 2 minutes,
Okay.
and Joe, I think, is going to speak for a minute.
Okay, do you want me to prompt you at that 2-minute mark?
Well, I'm hoping that I'll get there just in time.
Okay, perfect.
But please do if you need to.
Okay, no problem. So you button on the right when you want to speak, and the light will go red. So whenever you're ready, take it away.
Well, good evening. I act on behalf of the Sharples family, who've lived in Stockton for over 120 years. I see 5 key assets to the scheme. 1, a genuine opportunity for local people to build or commission a home of their own design to form a small group of 13 self-built homes. 2, strong community cohesion and safety with less chance of antisocial behaviour. 3, long-term protection of the green space and facilities on the adjacent playing field. 4, a great deal for First Stockton Scouts, replacing the ugly prefab building with a new Scouts hut. And 5, income for local business and building the homes and infrastructure. Now, last October you asked us firstly to resolve design and landscape issues which arose just before the committee, and secondly settle a Section 106 agreement to include a new Scouts hut. So first, we devised 2 separate schemes which were tested by a secure design consultant. The submitted housing layout, combined with a circular path around the playing field, will enhance security, deter antisocial behaviour and strengthen the local community. We've incorporated other suggestions raised by the landscape officer and adapted the scheme to change the access point for the Scouts. Second, based on the Council's template, a Section 106 agreement was produced, now substantially agreed, providing 1, long-term security of the playing field on a 999-year lease to the Parish Council, and 2, dedicated and secure Scouts area, again on a long lease, with the offer to construct the new purpose-designed hut and assist with sourcing the funds to pay for it. This will ensure the continuity of First Stockton Scouts in building designed by them and for them. So, my client has worked diligently with many case officers on different schemes over the past 10 years, with support from ward councillors, parish council and the Scouts.
2 minutes.
The current scheme, we believe, provides the best solution, enhances facilities in the village, provides high-quality plots for those who wish to build their own home, a home they can be proud of. Welcome any questions.
I can confirm that First Stockton Open Scout Group remains supportive of the above agreement, which represents the best opportunity for securing the long-term future of this valuable community organisation. We've been in existence in the village since 1976, nearly 50 years, and over the course of those years have offered scouting provision to hundreds of young people. The group provides a variety of scouting activities for Stockton and surrounding villages. The hut and field are also used on occasion by the wider scouting community in Warwickshire and beyond. Our group caters for boys and girls aged 6 to 18. The group involves around 60 children and young people from the locality at any given time and meets the aims of the Scout Association by developing young people as individuals through a progressive training scheme to become responsible citizens and members of their local, national and international communities.
If I could ask you to wrap up now,
Yeah,
you've had your
the
time.
last sentence. The Scout Association is accessible to all without inequality. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for our speakers? Councillor Keithley.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you very much for that. I was a scout for a long time. In fact, I was a wolf cub back in the 60s. I've got a couple of questions. Trevor, is it? John, sorry. Mentioned antisocial behaviour and security. That's one issue that I'd like to get clear in my mind as what is proposed. But also, you've just mentioned that, you know, the Scout Hut could be a facility for a wide range of children, 6 to 18, and I'm just interested in the number of car spaces you've got and whether or not you feel that that's going to be sufficient if you get a lot of people coming, because once the cars get there, there's nowhere else to park other than reverse out through the site. So if you could help me with those, that would be great.
Would you like me to deal with those, both of those, or would you like both of us to deal with those? Okay. Dealing with the issue of the second issue first about the spaces, I think we're satisfied that there are a number of dedicated spaces in the car park to deal with the Scouts that do come by car. But we always assume that since the Scouts are coming from Stockton, most of them would come probably on foot or by bicycle. And those who don't would be dropped off by parents and then would probably walk to the Scout Hut themselves. So we don't really anticipate that many Scouts would be coming by car because they're younger than, they're not normally expected to drive. So that's the first point. You asked about security. Now, the issue of security and surveillance was actually raised by ourselves in the very first design code and design and access statement which we did. We highlighted that as an issue because at the time there was a problem of drug taking, of antisocial behaviour in the open space. And what we felt was it was important to try and address that as part of the scheme because the applicants live in Stockton themselves and appreciate the problems in the village. What we felt was that first of all we needed to trim and prune the area along the back, which they did, and that solved most of the problem because there weren't quiet and hidden areas for people to get up to mischief. Secondly, they cooperated in building a circular path which goes round the open space which they also own to the northwest. So that circular path provides surveillance in itself. And then thirdly, the scheme itself was designed to provide surveillance over the open space. Now, the actual design has turned out to be a sort of a fairly moot point as to which is the best way to do it. But we did hire a crime security by design consultant, and we put the two schemes to him and said, which do you think is preferable? And he preferred the scheme that we produced because he said it gives internal coherence, and it means that people are looking in on the scheme themselves. Because if you look outwards from a scheme, effectively the scheme itself doesn't have internal surveillance, and that was what we wanted to try and achieve. Surveillance over the open space, but also surveillance over the houses themselves. So I think we've tried to achieve that, and I think we have.
Thank you very much. Anyone else got any questions? No? Looking around the table? Thank you both very much for your contribution. And the last speaker on this item will be Councillor Crump. Good evening, Councillor.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. How are you?
Very well. So I'm pretty sure you know the drill. You've got 5 minutes. I shall give you a 30-second warning, and whenever you're ready, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I know this site very well. Used to play football for Stockton there in the 80s, and that's the 1980s, by the way, Stuart, not the 1880s, just for clarity, before the club moved to its new, highly successful current facility in 1987. Yeah, this is, I'm supporting this application that despite some applications, some objections, the statutory consultees are happy, there's no objections, and there are some recommendations, conditions, notes and planning obligations in the paper which would cover all the objections, and obviously there's the issue regarding section 106 as well that the Charlotte said. So I think they are covered. Whilst I have heard some of the concerns and complaints, I think they have been covered, but as it's a democratic society, it's right that people express these concerns and they've been noted. Certainly there's several benefits. It will enable villagers to stay in the village and design potentially their own house. The PC, Parish Council, will get a long lease on the playing field, which is 10,667 square metres. And again, that security of tenure will enable the Playing Fields Committee to generate additional funding, because sometimes Sport England or different associations require certainly a lease of 20 years plus. Obviously this, 50 times that, but they do require security of tenure, and that will help. I think it will improve the air and surroundings, and we've spoken briefly about antisocial behaviour. Again, there was one of the things mentioned in the programme, in the actual report, will go some way to contributing, providing a 3-year rolling programme supply for self-build, and I think Charlotte's given that moderate weight. It's low in density, and it's like Jubilee Fields, which is right next door to it. I think that's the most recent, or one of the most recent developments in the village. It's in keeping with the village, which is LSV2. And it's also saying in the report there's no unacceptable harm to the neighbours. One of the potential long-term benefits is to make Scouts sustainable and to have a new improved purpose-built facility. And I've been working with the applicant and the Scouts to help this, try and facilitate this if the application is approved, which hopefully you will do. And we will start the ball rolling on a fundraising programme to help fund the purpose-built development that the developers are likely to be offering to the Scouts. The Scouts are very enthusiastic. It's a great organisation. 60 plus people go there. Many walk, most of them walk there. Yeah. It's really enthusiastic. I've been there a couple of times, and I can tell I'm getting old. I needed me defenders, but it's always a good sign when children are noisy, that they're enjoying yourself. You always think when children are quiet, there's something wrong. So, great facility. Joe and all the team do some great jobs there. And I just thoroughly recommend and support the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Well within your time. Does anyone have any questions for the ward member, please? Councillor Keithley?
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Crump. One question I really want to ask, if we can put the plan up again. Oh, it's there. So, you know, sometimes these self and custom build house plots take quite a long time to get to build out. You need, you know, they're marketed for a certain period of time and take a while to build out. And you've just said that yourself that you like to hear the kids making a bit of noise, which I do too, because I loved Scouts. You know, it was fantastic for me. I was involved for a long, long time. And Scouting tends to happen in the evenings. So I'm just interested in your views on the two properties that are closest to the Scout hut, and whether or not you feel there is sufficient buffer between those properties and those plots and the activities of the Scouts, which are right next door.
Yeah, I'm going to say there already is some activities that go quite close to the existing properties. So, one, they don't particularly go on late. It's not every night. And I think most people who move next to a park, you know, obviously there's going to be a play there, and then the Scout, they would expect some form of noise. And one of the issues that they've been having, and one of the things that the Playing Fields Committee and potentially this will solve, is that reduction in antisocial behaviour. You know, it won't be cool to go to this place now because there's loads of people about. And there's there's too many distractions, there's too noisy. So I think that will help as well. So pros and cons, there might be some additional noise some of the time, but that will be early in the evening, and that will counteract any potential antisocial behaviour that's happening at 11 o'clock at night or somebody's racing around. So thank you for that.
Anybody else? No? So no more questions then, Councillor. Thank you very much for your contribution. Okay, so we move on to points of clarification with our officers. Does anyone have any points of clarification? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 25 and page 33 refer to the possibility of the common land, so to speak, being managed by a management company. I am under the impression that it's the current administrations that shouldn't happen anymore. Could the current position be explained in relation to this application, please?
Sorry, just so I'm clear, did you say page 25?
Page 25.
Right, okay, yeah, in terms of the open space. So we would always include that as a fail-safe, and that's in accordance with Part L. That primarily that the open space should go to Parish Council, and then it would cascade down to District Council, and then to Management Company, otherwise if no other provisions were in place for either the Parish Council or the District to take it on.
I understand that. My question is that my understanding is that the intention is, I think this has already been discussed at Council, that these sort of common areas in development schemes should no longer be put down to management by a management company because they don't have a good reputation. Experience is bad. So I'm just asking whether that is the case, and the Council does have a policy which says a management company can't be employed, or whether that isn't formally the case yet, and that therefore this is a possibility for this application.
The Council doesn't have a policy on it because it's supplementary planning guidance. So it's guidance, so it's not the same as your core strategy policies. but the new Part L does still include an option as a last resort for a management company, otherwise there would be no management at all. And if members need me to have a look into that, I can just check that for you, check the wording whilst other questions are asked, because I just want to be sure on this one.
Thank you very much.
Would you like that check, Councillor Harvey?
Well, I wouldn't want us to approve an application with a condition which causes a problem subsequently, that's all.
Not a problem. Are there any other points of clarification? Councillor Fleming.
Yeah, just something that somebody else has alluded to as well. Self-build and custom houses can take a while to actually happen. Is there any idea of the timescale that this site will go to completion, please?
We don't have ideas of timescales, but in terms of the conditions that we've suggested, there's certainly trying to limit the time between the submission of the reserve matters applications and all of the other details that we require for the development to be progressing. So that's how we can try and make sure that the development does come forward as soon as possible in terms of the timing of those conditions.
You may.
In terms of design, and when it says self and custom build, are the people who are going to buy these houses, have they going to be choosing from a catalogue, or is it going to be submitting their own designs? You know, what's the format for what they're going to decide is going to be built? I know this is outlined, so that's why I'm asking the question.
Yes, so the applicants that submit the reserve matters applications for their own dwellings would have to show that they have primary input into the design of the dwelling. So they would have to demonstrate exactly what input they've had. Obviously, that can range between different applications. So there's no sort of hard and fast rules. It's just they have to demonstrate that they have been involved in a primary way in the design of the dwelling that they've put forward.
Councillor Parry.
Excuse me, sorry. Thank you, Chair. I've just got a query on the numbers regarding the self-build. The report clearly states that we have provision for 2 further self-build, and this obviously exceeds that, which is fine. What I'd be interested to know, that if the committee is minded to approve this application, which therefore gives us an oversupply of self-build, would this mean that any further self-build applications that come forward would not be considered favourably because we have already met an oversubscription for the current supply, providing there weren't further people adding themselves to the register?
So as you're aware, it's a 3-year rolling demand that we have to provide. And the figures that we've got in the report are up until October 2024. So obviously that figure is ongoing past that point. And as a council, we need to ensure that we are providing those self and custom build plots to try and meet that demand going forward. So with an application that comes forward, it would be assessed on its own merits. So obviously we would have to assess it at that point in time as to exactly what the demand was and what supply we had based on, those figures that we've got to hand. So it would be completely, at that time it would be assessed.
Councillor Harvey, again.
Thank you, Chairman. I wondered, before we hear from Richard with the definitive version, I wondered whether I should have asked the Chairman of the Parish Council, Councillor Collison, whether the Parish Council has already had a discussion and has a view about whether they intend to take on the responsibility for this area of common land, so to speak. That would obviate the need for a problem. I'm trying to be helpful.
So in terms of the public open space adjacent to the site, so that's land within the blue line, the Parish Council are interested in taking it on, as they've mentioned earlier, in terms of the 999-year lease. And it is their intention to take that public open space on. We just have provided a fail-safe you know, for every eventuality, that's what we've had to put in place.
I'm very reassured. Thank you.
Richard?
Okay, I had a look at the new Part L, and on page 9, it says, where it's talking about different types of public open space, it says, where any of these types of space cannot be managed by the town or parish council or the district council and are to be retained by the developers or transferred to a management company, the quality of management or maintenance must be maintained at a high standard. So the option's still there in the new Part L. If this application falls under that, obviously if it falls under the old Part L, then it's definitely there. So it's under both Part Ls.
Any more points of clarification? Oh, Councillor Keithley.
Thank you. Well, you heard my earlier questions. I'm just wanting to be satisfied that you're happy with the number of spaces for parking. Also, I'm interested to know if any conditions would be attached to the operation of the Scout Hut to ensure the amenity of the immediate neighbours. Please.
So in terms of the amenity of the existing and the proposed neighbours, that's something we have assessed in terms of the indicative plan that's been submitted. So looking at the separation distances, we haven't raised any concerns in terms of the impact that would likely occur from the siting as proposed. And environmental health have been consulted as part of the application throughout the whole process, and at no point have they raised any concerns with the proximity to any dwellings. Yeah, in terms of the car parking, same thing really. We've assessed it as part of the application. At the moment, it's an outline application, even for the Scout Hut element, but we haven't raised any concerns in terms of the parking provision, understanding how it would work on site.
Any more? No? Okay, fantastic. Let's open it up for debate then. Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. It's always refreshing when we have an application where we have no objections from the consultees. Obviously, this was brought back, if memory serves me right, for clarification around the Section 106 agreement. On that basis, it's always good to see a developer working in close liaison with the parish council for a community benefit. And therefore, I'm very pleased to propose this application in line with the officer's recommendation to grant. Thank you.
Ooh. Councillor Parker.
Happy to second.
Okay. Councillor Harvey, do you still want to speak? Okay. Can I just clarify, Councillor Parry, that also includes the additional note on the update sheet, note number 9? Okay. Would anyone else like to speak? No? Then we have a proposer and a seconder to grant. Can I see a show of hands, please?
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. Therefore, committee resolves to grant application 2102-330/OUT.
Okay, so just getting to get this presentation up, because we're now moving on to item 5, application 24/01610/FUL Cattle Yard West Meads Farm, Pillerton Road, Butlers Marston. Looks like you're getting there with the presentation, so once you're ready, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. So the proposal before members is demolition of existing building and erection of a self-built dwelling alongside associated access and landscaping works at Cattle Yard, Westmeads Farm, Butlers Marston. So the application site is denoted by the black dot on the map on the screen, approximately 0.5 kilometres southwest of Butlers Marston. So you've got the application site there outlined in red. And then you've got existing agricultural buildings which are in the application site as they are in situ. And then we go on to the proposed site plan. And then you've got the proposed elevations there. And then we go on to the proposed floor plans. And then we move on to some site images. So you've got the application site on the left-hand side. So on the right-hand side of the image, you've got a map which shows the adjacent road, and then obviously the application site outlined in red, and the arrow notes the direction that the photo was taken from. So we are looking southwest towards where the vehicle access would be. And then we've got another site photo from the opposite direction, looking northeast, again at the vehicle access site. And then we've got another application site. So this is site photo taken at the vehicle access, looking south towards where the proposed dwelling would be. And then we've got a site photo from just adjacent to the application site, again looking towards where the proposed dwelling would be. Again, another site photo showing the application site. So this would be looking northeast. And in summary, it's considered the proposed demolition of the existing buildings and erection of one self-built dwelling alongside the associated access and landscaping works is unacceptable as it does not comply with the relevant policies of the core strategy. It is there recommended that the application is refused. Please see the update sheet for updates. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Stuart. Councillor Parry, did you have something you want to raise?
Yes, I'm awfully sorry, Chair. I've just noticed that I do know the applicant. I currently work part-time for an estate agents in Kyneton, and therefore, I'm sorry I didn't spot it before, but I therefore think I need to withdraw from the committee on this application.
Yep, that's absolutely fine. Thank you for raising it. Okay. So now that Councillor Parry has withdrawn, we can move to our first speaker, who is Councillor Simon Corp, Butlers Marston Parish Council. Good evening, Councillor. So you have 3 minutes. I'm happy to give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. And it's the button on the right-hand side to turn on the microphone. Otherwise, when you're ready, take it away.
Good evening. I'm Simon Corp. I'm speaking this evening to represent Butlers Marston Parish Council in support of this planning application. If we can move to slide 2, please. The Parish Council feels this scheme would be far more in keeping with the surrounding and the aesthetics of the village and the parish than the existing structure and the Class Q application for consent. There are 2 key reasons for this: the materials used and the community spirit of Butlers Marston. Moving to slide 3 and the appearance. The proposed materials in this application would be more sympathetic to the local area The existing Class Q plans include significant amounts of red brick, glass and cladding. There are no similar residential buildings in the village or the parish like this. Such a large amount of glass, as you can see from the images, and the cladding would be in huge contrast to the parish and would look far more industrial than any other building along that road, and in our opinion, does not contribute positively to the local area and the landscape. Moving on to slide 4, many of the buildings in the village date back to the 1800s. The parish properties along the road represent the character and history of our community. Recent developments in our parish, on slide 5 please, and our neighbouring parishes reflect this local character and complement the surrounding properties and local landscape. On slide 6, the proposed plans outlined materials including white lyre stone, which is far more in keeping with the properties in our parish compared to the modern conversions such as in Class Q planning. This would enable the property to blend into the countryside rather than stick out. Moving on to the community spirit on slide side, you may know that Butlers Marston is a small village with a very strong community spirit. Although this proposed development is outside of the village curtilage, approximately 670 metres from the Memorial Cross, which is identified on this map in the village, it is still in our parish and part of our community. Other properties in our community at a similar distance from the Memorial Cross include Blacklands Farm at 679 metres, Tubbs End Farm at 835 metres, and Lobbington Farm at 1.54 kilometres. All of these properties are in keeping with the area and the traditional building design, and many of the residents are actively involved in contributing to our community. We feel that the layout, location and design of this proposed house would be more encouraging for families than the Class Q plans. The proposed house would give the occupants a better sense of place and hopefully feel more part of our community. I hope you feel able to consider this application for the merits it would bring to our parish and the positive impact it would have on our community and the wider street scene. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just within your time. Members, do you have any questions for our parish council representative? Nothing forthcoming? No, in which case, thank you very much for your contribution. Our next speaker then is Mr. James Hodgkins, agent for the applicants. Good evening. So similarly, you have 3 minutes. I'm happy to give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. So just button on the right-hand side, and when you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Members, thank you for your time this evening and providing me with an opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant. As you've heard, the application seeks permission for the replacement of the redundant barns and the construction of a 1.5-storey dwelling. By way of background, planning permission has been granted for the conversion of one of the barns to create a 3-bedroom dwelling. As that permission remains extant, there is a significant fallback position. Furthermore, given the material circumstances have not changed, that permission could reasonably be extended to a further 3 years through the submission of an identical application. The residential use of the site has therefore been firmly established and is considered to be acceptable. The key matters at issue therefore relate to the design, appearance and the impact of the proposal on the surroundings. From the outset, I'd highlight that the applicant's primary aim is to deliver a high-quality traditional dwelling that is more befitting of the rural character of Butlers Marston than the consented scheme. The design has carefully been considered to be sympathetic to the local vernacular and the built typology as shown previously. The consented conversion has a modern appearance and introduces contemporary materials, including a metal roof and cladding and a large expanse of glazing. This is not reflective of the appearance of the area. To the contrary, the proposed dwelling is finished in natural stone, clay roof tiling, and will have a painted timber doors and windows. In short, it is far more appropriate to the locality and represents a significant improvement over and above the extant permission. The proposal also integrates a host of renewable energy measures and built fabric energy efficiency improvements to ensure the dwelling is highly sustainable. Whilst it is acknowledged that the height of the dwelling has marginally increased, this is necessitated by the introduction of a first floor and is offset by a reduction in the footprint of the building. The proposal has also been significantly reduced in scale from that previously considered by this committee and has been reorientated through 90 degrees to mirror its existing relationship. A further benefit includes the removal of the Dutch barn in the consented scheme, which would remain a prominent and imposing feature. With regards to the officer's comment in respect of the domestic curtilage, we would highlight that the site can be strictly controlled through the removal of permitted development rights, which my client is agreeable to. This will ensure that the setting of the site remains rural in character. Importantly, the proposed development is welcomed by the local community and has received resounding support from the local residents and the parish council, who comment specifically on the improved appearance and the dwelling and the reference to the local character. Lastly, I'd highlight that there are no objections from any statutory consultees. Overall, the application will deliver an attractive, sustainable home that reflects the rural character of the site and typology of Butler's Marston. It is a significant improvement over and above the consented scheme and has attracted local support. In this regard, it is a scheme that is wholly deserving of planning consent, and we'd respectfully ask for your support. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Just within your time, members, do we have any questions for the agent, for the applicant? Councillor Keithley.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that. You just mentioned that the proposed dwelling that's going to be bigger than the existing barn has been moved through, was it 90 degrees or 180 degrees? I was just interested to know why you've done that and how that relates to the glass front of the Class Q, which we saw a minute ago. And there was a comment about the amount of glass from the parish councillor.
Yeah, forgive me. The proposed dwelling is actually smaller in footprint than the existing barn that you can see. You've also got the demolition of the Dutch barn. The reference to the turning the building through 90 degrees is to a previous application that was considered by this committee. The turning it through 90 degrees is to mirror the exact orientation of the existing barn, so the gable facing the end. So as you see the progression through those slides there, the gable end faces the road. So that was a reference to a previous application. So it's an improvement requested by this committee. In terms of the glazed gable, if you can flick to the parish council's elevations, that would be very helpful. So instead of the glazing, if you can flick through to the proposed development, you would have a more traditional, balanced facade with inset dormer windows, keeping the height down as low as possible, but with minimal glazing on the ground floor, but still some, but inset in the liar stone.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yes. I wonder if I could draw your attention to one sentence and read it out for the benefit of the audience. On page 46, in the report, the officer says, however, with only 7 months remaining to discharge conditions and complete the Class Q conversion, I am doubtful that there is a greater than theoretical possibility of the Class Q permission being completed within the required timescales were planning permission not forthcoming for this development. Is that a statement you agree with or disagree with?
I agree that there's 7 months of the current application. I disagree with regards to the appetite to develop the site. The application would have come forward a little earlier, but there was a family bereavement. Moreover, the Class Q regulations are still in force in the current regulations. If we were to submit that identical scheme that you've seen that has consent, I believe it would appreciate it need to be considered by officers, but there is no difference and I believe would benefit from consent again.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? In which case, thank you for your contribution. Our final speaker then is Ward Member Councillor Mills. Good evening, Councillor. So, got your 5 minutes. Happy to give you a 30-second warning.
Yeah, thank you.
When you're comfy, take it away.
Chair. Thank you. Oh, good evening, committee. As you know, the previous application for this site was refused. However, the applicant has gone a long way to improve the application to satisfy the planning officer. I feel that this proposal is in keeping with its surroundings, and I'm sure that when you have made your individual site visit, you have seen a very dilapidated old barn, which in my opinion is a blot on the landscape, as you can see by the photo in front of you. This proposed application sits just outside the main village of Butler's Marston and does not in any way interfere with the street scene, but just the opposite. This application will improve the approach to the village with a sympathetic and well-designed residential home. Members of the committee will know that I hold all the planning officers in high regard, but I'm afraid this time I disagree with Stuart, the planning officer, who says, and I quote, considers the proposed dwelling would cause more harm to the character and appearance of the area. Surely this proposal would enhance the countryside by demolishing a dilapidated eyesore and replacing it with a very attractive residential home. The report also says on page 52, our last paragraph, would cause harm to the countryside. In my opinion, this new build, which will be of natural stone, will be sympathetic to the homes in the village of Butlers Marston and will also enhance the countryside. You would have noticed on your site visit that the homes in Butlers Marston are in the main constructed with natural stone. A few members of this panel already remember a similar application in Butlers Marston, where the old disused barns were replaced by 3 residential homes built of natural stone, which are situated in the village. These homes are far more visible than this proposed application, but once again enhance the approach of the village. Members of the committee may remember the Rising Fields Farm application in Kyneton, where long-established chicken sheds were to be replaced by residential dwellings. The chicken sheds were in open countryside, and in this case, the planning officer recommended granting the application. So I asked myself, if the chicken sheds, which were in the open countryside, and the application was granted, so why shouldn't this application be granted? Surely we must be consistent. There are no objections from Warwickshire County Council, Highways, or Severn Trent, and no objections for Stratford District Council, Environmental Health. However, there are 16 letters of support from the residents of Butlers Marston. In summary, this is a well-designed residential dwelling and will sit well in this area. It will be replacing an old, decrepit, run-down, dilapidated eyesore, which as it stands has been a blot on the landscape for years. Instead, you will see a very well-designed property constructed of natural stone, which is sympathetic to the area of Butlers Marston. I would ask this committee to grant this application. Thanks, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for our ward member? Councillor Keithley.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Mills. I appreciate that many might see this existing barn, the brick barn, as a dilapidated, dreadful eyesore. But some might say that it's been there an awful long time and it's part of the agricultural scene. How do you square those two off if we're looking at an agricultural scene and it's an agricultural barn?
I think, as you can see by that photograph, it looks pretty awful.
It looks like a barn.
Yeah, it looks like a barn, and it is an eyesore. I mean, and I think all the residents in Butlers Marston will say the same thing. So I'm quite happy to see an old barn, which has no merit to me whatsoever, to come down and replaced by a very nice dwelling.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Councillor Scorer.
Thank you, Chair. Just following Councillor Keithley's question, are those barns, obviously they're agricultural, are they uses in for agricultural at the moment?
There's no use whatsoever at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for our ward member? No. In which case, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Councillor
Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, we can then move on to points of clarification from our officers. Councillor Eden.
Thank you, Chair. Stuart, I feel like I've seen a picture that you scrolled through that showed both the barns sort of side by side. I just want to get a feel for the yeah. Maybe not. They're all in perspective with each other. We're talking a lot about the height. I'm starting to debate, so I should shush. If you don't know, that's okay. Sorry. That's
Is that one helpful? So that's a Google Street View image. So you've got, that's the two, you've got the Dutch barn there and the brick-built barn, which forms the Class Q.
Okay, jolly good. Any further points of clarification? Councillor Keithley?
When we are considering this application, how relevant is it that the applicant could come forward with a renewal of the Class Q and thus be able to say, well, actually, we can deliver the Class Q because we'd have 3 more years? Is that relevant as we consider this?
No, you couldn't give weight to a fallback relating to a permission that's not yet been granted. You can give weight to a fallback on the Class Q that's been granted. We wouldn't recommend that for the reasons in the report, but we certainly wouldn't recommend giving weight to a permission, the outcome of which is yet to be known.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming?
We see that the new proposal is taller than the existing barn, but is it taller than the Dutch barn that's going to be demolished? All I'm trying to sort of satisfy myself is that will the new height be more obtrusive than what's there already? Or, despite the fact it's going to be newer than the old brick barn, is it going to be taller than the Dutch barn? Just so I can rationalise that in my own mind.
So we haven't got any specific details on the height of the Dutch barn, but as you can see from that image there, they appear relatively comparable in height. I have got an image which shows the height of the proposal versus, so this is the height comparison of the proposed dwelling versus the approved Class Q, which is obviously the same height as the existing red brick agricultural barn. So that is the height of the red brick barn, and obviously you can see the height of the proposed dwelling in comparison.
Fine, thank you.
Councillor Parker?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, forgive me, I don't have the experience of many of the members on this committee, and I would just like to understand kind of fairly definitively whether or not, the notion is that development of this site has already been demonstrated by the Class Q, but now the Class Q is coming towards an end, and it would have to be a very rapid development of the Class Q in order to fulfil it within the time period allowed. Are we reviewing this on the basis that development on the site has been proven and demonstrated still, even though it's unlikely the Class Q could be built, and we're only considering this application and not another application which may or may not come forward?
Yes, I mean, in summary, what we're saying in the report is that you should assess this as a standalone new dwelling. You have obviously the presence of a standalone new dwelling in this location would be contrary to the core strategy because it's open countryside. I don't think that's in dispute. What the key issue here is what weight to give that fallback, and the fallback is the Class Q that we've already granted. It's important when you're thinking about the fallback to think of the Class Q finished, so not the pictures you've seen if it's in its dilapidated state, because the fallback isn't the current barn. No one's saying that will stay there. What the applicant's case is that the fallback position of the converted barn is a worse case than the one that's been put in front of you tonight. What officers are saying is that because of the time that's left, it's at the point that it's only theoretical because it just can't be done in that time, because a Class Q, it not only has to be started, it has to be completed, and I think they've got to do that by about early May next year. So that's the first test of the fallback, is it theoretical? The second one, even if you get past that, is you've then got to compare the two, and as I've said, you're comparing a converted barn, the one that Stuart's put up there, with the building that's under consideration tonight, which is the sort of cottage-style house. So those are the two that you're considering. And as officers have said in the report, it's a question of character, and the character of the area is open countryside. In our view, it would be very different if it was in Butlers Marston, because the character in Butlers Marston is different. But here it's a little bit away, so that's where we've taken our cue from in character.
Thank you, Richard. Any further points of clarification, or can we move to debate? In which case we can start the debate. Who would like to start? Councillor Eden leaning in.
It's times like this you miss Councillor Parry, isn't it? For me, and part of why I asked for the photos and then began debating with myself, was to work out where the Dutch barn sat within terms of the height, because regardless of if we overcome somehow condition number one, the height is still a problem. 2.2 metres higher, and you know Stuart's image there, for me, you know, made it very clear that it's a third bigger, effectively, and taller. I am very much the Class Q isn't realistic. I kind of have to accord with the officer as far as that goes in terms of its current timescales. I therefore can't really afford that much weight, at which point then we're left with very much an A versus Z kind of scenario, and whilst it's very much in keeping with the village, and I get that, it just doesn't accord to our policies, so I'd be very much minded, but I will listen to what others say, to go with the officer's recommendation on this one, I have to say.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey.
I don't want to get into the debate about the quality of this proposal or that proposal in terms of design. I can quite understand why the speakers who have spoken in favour think that this is a decent design to put forward. I can understand that. My problem is the Class Q requires it to be built within the next 7 months, within 3 years in total. And I don't hear an argument that that can realistically be achieved. Therefore, the Class Q becomes a theoretical. When the agent says, well, that's not really of importance because we could always come back with another application for exactly the same Class Q and we get it. Then we come back to Richard's point, well, that application hasn't been submitted, let alone determined. So I don't give that argument any weight at all. So I'm stuck with Class Q that is now reduced to a theoretical possibility which in practice can't be achieved. And therefore this reverts, in my mind, to being an application for a house in the open countryside. And it doesn't comply with the AS10. The argument hasn't been put that it does comply with any element of the exceptions granted by AS10. So I'm in the same camp as Councillor Eden, and I'm minded to refuse. And if you want a proposal, you have it.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Keithley.
Thanks, Chair. I can understand why people living nearby would look at the houses in the village and say a house like that in the countryside instead of the barn might look better, but that is a subjective matter because what's there already is an agricultural setting and an agricultural barn, and the Class Q was granted to convert the building that was there for residential use under different legislation. It's not a full planning application. So in my opinion, when I read the officer's report, I do see an issue with the design because what I see is an agricultural setting and the conversion of a barn, which will still look agricultural, and it'll be, even if it's got glass, there will be a nod to the barn that was there for decades. The house looks like you've, with the greatest respect, and I know the materials and what have you look like the local materials, but actually, to me, it feels like you're just moving a brand new residential build plonk into a field. Because in fact, the intention of the legislation for the conversion of agricultural buildings is to make them convertible. So I don't feel it's appropriate in terms of its design and location, and I go along with the officer when he feels that there is a significant harm to the environment, the agricultural environment, and the agricultural look of that area. So for that reason, I go with the professional officer's view on this, and I would second Councillor Harvey's proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Keithley. Councillor Hench-Serafin.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to the three councillors and I totally agree with what they say, and I will be going in line with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Getting a sense of feeling of direction, would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Scorer?
Thank you, Chair. I travel down this road quite a lot, and all the way from Butler's Marston to Pillerton Priors, there are houses left and right as well. So I think a new, and there's farm buildings as well. And I think it would fit in quite well with the new house would fit in quite well with the area. I get it, it's an old farm building, it's an old cattle yard, but you can clearly see it hasn't been used for some time. And on page 51, the officer said it's for the committee to weigh the balance, and quite rightly, people have said, you know, what weight should we put with the fallback, and you know, and that's why we're here, isn't it? It's what we decide. I've fallen on the other side. I think that, you know, that I think the I disagree with the officer. I think that with the fallback, although Class Q, I know it's 7 months, but if I remember rightly, and I think Councillor Mills brought it up a month ago, we granted one in Kyneton for the old chicken sheds that was for new dwellings, and that was in open countryside as well. So I think that it would enhance the area, so I'd be going against the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Parker.
Yes, I'm not going to rehearse all the arguments that have been, but I'll be in support of the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fleming.
Been a lot of talk about the Class Q. It's absolutely irrelevant when we actually come to this. The new application isn't higher than the Dutch barn. In reality, I don't see an issue with this, and in general, I wouldn't support the officer's recommendation, but I can't find a planning reason where I could argue the case with either the officer or the planning manager at this particular stage. So I'll probably abstain from this order.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think everyone's spoken apart from me. Yeah, I think I'm in favour of going with the officer's recommendation as well. Broadly speaking, I think we have to be incredibly careful about how we characterise the replacement of Class Qs, and the officer has done a diligent work in assessing that point in terms of the fallback position, and also looking at the impact that the new development will have within its setting. I think that objectively the use of, well, no, I think more subjectively the use of stone materials to make a house can, generally speaking, be seen as more attractive. But I think the parish council made reference to several farmsteads around the area. Notably, those are farmsteads, not isolated dwellings within the countryside. This will be an isolated dwelling within the countryside, where we currently have an agricultural building. So, and that's also notwithstanding the introduction of additional curtilage that ultimately is associated with residential houses, which doesn't come forward with Class Qs. So I can understand where the supports of this scheme are coming from, but I can't find that we have a policy justification for it, and so I will support the officer's recommendations. I think we've all spoken, so I can't see anything else coming up. So we have a proposal to refuse in line with the officer's recommendations, proposed and seconded. Can I see all those in favour, please?
6.
And opposed?
2.
Okay, in which case committee resolves to refuse application 24/01610/FUL. Okay, we'll now move on then to our final application of this evening, which is application 22/00257/FUL, land opposite Edge Hill Shooting Ground, Camp Lane, Warmington. Paul Thompson's our presenting officer. When you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, one and all. If I can get, there we go. Right, we are on Edge Hill, historic Edge Hill. This is opposite the shooting ground on Camp Lane. And normally on this slide, we would have a lot of very helpful Ordnance Survey style annotations. We don't on this one for reasons that are beyond me. However, roughly where my mouse is there is a public footpath, and roughly there, Arlescott Woods, and roughly here is a scheduled ancient monument, Nadbury Fort. However, in my view, it is not within the setting of that scheduled ancient monument due to the intervening vegetation and buildings and topography. What we have is a unit of tourist accommodation for occupation by a single family, which will be accessed off Camp Lane through a new access with a parking area, which you can see there. The coloured areas are areas of wildflower planting and woodland improvement, wildlife habitat enhancement. All of these are benefits of granting permission for this scheme. And this is what it's going to look like. Rather intriguing sort of tree house. Perhaps that's more illustrative. It's going to be erected on pilings, which will be driven into the slope to provide a level platform with sort of angular hobbit house type arrangement. And use of natural materials, 1.5 stories, and this will accommodate tourists. Here are some CGI renders, nice bit of golden hour lighting there. And this was my attempt at some golden hour lighting about 3 hours ago. It occurred to me that I hadn't got any photos in the last 2 years, so I thought it might be worth getting some more. So jogged along the path, and this is roughly the clump of trees in which the treehouse will be secreted. That's the view in the opposite direction. Rather lovely. and that is probably in there somewhere, the tree, probably. But by that point, which rather emphasises the point of this photo, you can't really see it. So there we have it, Chair. In my view, this development will contribute positively to the aims and objectives of the Cotswolds National Landscape Management Plan, which it is our statutory duty to uphold. It complies with our own policies on tourism, on the rural economy, and on the distribution of development in the open countryside. And for that reason, Chair, I recommend that we grant planning permission.
Thank you very much, Paul. Oh, Councillor
Sorry, Chair, I think I've done Councillor Parry. I got my bearings wrong. I thought it was the other side of the wood by the campsite. My grandfather used to farm this land, and I don't think I could give a partial view. So if I could step back, please.
Yep, that's absolutely fine. Thank you for raising it. Okay, no one else? Really good. We'll move on then to our first speaker, who is Councillor Mark Burstall of Ormington and Alscott Parish Council. Good evening, Councillor. So yes, you have 3 minutes. I'm happy to give you a 30-second warning, and it's the button on the right-hand side to turn on the microphone. And when you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Chairman. In my view, this proposal is a cynical, speculative, commercial development. As such, we must question why it lacks any supportive financial data, which is surely a requirement of any commercial development. We doubt that a single treehouse can generate sufficient income to be viable, and our fear is that the applicant will be seeking to place further treehouses on the site, using the first as a precedent. Certainly, I understand that in early contact with some Alscott residents, the developer spoke of a development of 2 or 3 tree houses. Our written submissions have spelled out the adverse environmental impact that we feel would result, and we give no credence to the applicant's remedial report for the reasons we have set out previously. The site is located in ancient woodland, in currently unspoilt countryside, as you saw in those slides. It is a haven for wildlife and is renowned for its spectacular display of native English bluebells and primroses every year. We maintain that the proposed development would threaten the existing flora and fauna rather than enhance it, as claimed by the applicants. We have pointed out that the impact is not just the treehouse itself, but the parking area and the servicing of the site will have a serious adverse impact. I've lived in Alscott for nearly 50 years and frequently use the footpath through the site. Almost every time I do, I see deer, rabbits, sometimes even a hare. The variety of birds is wonderful, but does not extend to the suggested skylarks, corn buntings, or lapwings. The wide range of vertebrates and invertebrates present on the site is inevitably threatened by the activities related to the building and the use of the treehouse. The application site is very close to the hamlet of Alscott. As a very small community, the proposed development would have a disproportionately large and adverse impact on the hamlet. You may ask why there have been few objections from the Alscott residents. Most I have spoken to believe that their views are rarely taken into account by Stratford and that the most effective response is via the parish council. Finally, I would draw your attention to a paragraph in the parish plan which says, and I quote, "Areas of underdeveloped land which contribute to the character of the parish should remain open." This is just such an area. Quite simply, we feel, whilst this may be a great concept, it's entirely inappropriate in this location, and we believe it fails to meet CS 5, 6, 9, 11 and 12. On behalf of all our applicants, I would ask you to reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor, just on your time. Yes, Councillor Parry.
Hello and good evening. You mentioned your parish plan. Can you just advise when this was adopted by Stratford District Council, and in other words, has it been reviewed recently?
It was adopted about 7 years ago. We have recently carried out an update which has been sent through to Stratford for adoption of the update.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for our parish council representative? No, nothing forthcoming. Thank you for your contribution. Okay, we move on then to our next speakers. Adam Crisford and Karen Quarterman, applicants for the application. Good evening. So you have 3 minutes between you. How would you like to split it? Yep. Okay, that's absolutely fine. I'll give you a 30-second warning. And otherwise, once you're ready, it's the button on the right-hand side. Yeah. And once you're ready, take it away.
Lovely. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time listening to our application. As Paul mentioned, it's been quite a long road getting this application to its current state. We've undertaken all the survey and mitigation work that's been requested along the way, and we're looking to develop this small-scale, low-impact single unit in the form of a couple's treehouse. As a bit of background to the site, while we're only looking at a small parking area and a single treehouse unit, the site is as shown, a larger 8.5 acre site which forms part of Arscote Wood. Sadly, the woodland was felled, I think it was several decades ago. It's sort of long gone. The tree stumps have disappeared, and it's resorted to brambles and grassland. My background is conservation. I don't come at this from a cynical sort of property development point of view, nor does my wife. Sorry. This project seeks to support the management and enhancement of the woodland in a low-impact manner that doesn't involve any large-scale tree felling or other destructive forestry practices. Yeah, sorry.
But would you like a glass of water?
I'm okay now, thank you very much.
Sure,
Got
okay.
myself together. Increasing biodiversity is actually the inspiration for this project. We walk our dogs in the woodland around the corner on Edge Hill, and we're well aware of the bluebells that are established underneath the woodland, and we wish to restore that to this area. They are still there. They're very much dormant, but they will re-establish if we can get a tree canopy back over the land. Moving on to, at this point, we have no objection from the following consultees. Ecology is no objection, highways is no objection. Cotswold Conservation Board, following updated information, is now no objection. Rights of way is no objection, and the neighbouring parish. We understand that there is continued objection from Warmington Parish. We very much hope they had a chance to review the additional information and agree with the conclusions from the Cotswold Conservation Board. But we understand the sensitive nature of the site. The previous concerns related to lighting, which were following the additional information provided to the CCB. They actually concluded the revisions made to lighting and glazing would help reduce visual landscape visual impact to the point where they are considered satisfactory. Similar, the visual impact concerns raised, we've provided photo surveys, landscape visual impact assessment, and the CCB have reviewed that, saying that having reviewed the amended plans and visited the site, they now consider the proposal to conserve and enhance the national landscape and scenic beauty of the Cotswolds national landscape, further acknowledging that the treehouse can only be viewed from one specific angle and unlikely to result in significant adverse impacts.
I'll just ask you to wrap it up there.
Sure. So we very much considered all the concerns and wish to make the mitigations on the site. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Got questions from members? So Councillor Hench-Seraphin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening.
Evening.
Have you done an assessment on viability on this one tree house?
So we, from the outset, we worked alongside a consultant who are called, I never get them the right around, Canopy and, no, they're Crown and Canopy, who are in partnership with Canopy and Stars. Canopy and Stars are effectively the largest, the Airbnb, if you like, of glamping accommodation. And their recommendation was, because we wish to be low impact on the site, that their recommendation was to go premium with the treehouse that you've seen, because that can command a high nightly rate. And so financially, they produced a report for us.
So you think this application in this treehouse would attract the people interested in nature, conservation people interested in animals?
It is, I mean, again, they produced a sort of a market report on the glamping industry, and the vast majority of people looking for this style accommodation are the eco-conscious, looking for sustainable breaks in nature. Part of what my background is bird of prey conservation, and so as part of the offering for a weekend stay, we're considering having owls and wildlife as part of sort of experiences that they can have alongside. So that's why we feel that one unit will be sufficient, because we can boost the income in other ways.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey next.
Thank you. Naive, simple question. Looking at the diagrams of the illustration of the proposed treehouse, it stands on legs. Anybody asking the question, will the legs cause any damage? Might be regarded as naive because it's already been taken into account by the officer in his report. But can you tell me whether the foundations, the leg foundations, are likely to cause any damage or not?
So we'd be conscious of tree preservation zones in terms of the root structure of the trees, and so we're comfortable that screw pile foundations don't impact a tree in that way.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Parry.
You'll have to forgive me because I think it's probably in the report, but could you just confirm the number of additional jobs this has the potential of creating, obviously with changeovers and management of the actual area?
Yeah, forgive me. I think it is in the report, but it would certainly be ourselves and an additional helper to assist with changeovers. Any additional employment would be around the experiences that we could provide in a very small scale manner.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Yes, I think I've got a question which is probably also in there, I'm afraid. I'm a last minute substitute, so yeah, apologies. What is the power source for the dwelling?
So power would be, the electrical power would be utilising modern lithium iron phosphate batteries. So I'm trying to think, exactly the same as you find in a electric car. So they come in a unit, like a suitcase, about this big, and that would be sufficient to power the unit for several days on low power 12 volt electric systems. And all we'd need to do is swap one unit in and swap the other one out at changeover, and that would power it sufficient for that couple's stay. So yeah, that's how we'd be powering lighting and electrics.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Keithley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you for that. Very interesting to see the diagrams and all that. I'm just interested in the lighting. You mentioned that the lighting was kind of low level because there would be landscape impact. Is that the same sort of level that would minimise the impact on bats, or if there are any up there, or the wildlife, the rabbits down below when it's bedtime for the rabbits?
Yeah, so the lighting, I think it states horizontal cut-offs. There's no upward lighting, which is what impacts the bat population. We will also have these on movement sensors. So any external lighting will be on tripped movement sensors. So they will only be active between the times that they're required, but even then, only at the point at which they're triggered by movement of a person walking by the doorway. So, yeah, we don't wish to be lighting up the countryside.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, in which case, thank you both for your contribution.
Thank you.
Okay. We can now move on then to points of clarification from our officers. Does anyone have a point of clarification? Councillor Harvey.
Can I preface my question by referring to page 64, and can I thank the officer for the introduction to my vocabulary of the word Sylvanian. I had to look it up.
If I might jump in, I need to correct myself there, Councillor. It's actually Sylvan, not Sylvanian.
I beg your pardon. Of the forest, my dictionary tells me. My question is twofold. Just out of interest, is this a unique application? How many tree houses are there in the district? But my real question relates to condition number 1, where it simply says time limit. Can you expand on what that means, please?
As far as I know, it's the only one in the district. It's the only one I've come across, anyway. But to your point, time limit is the standard time limit condition, 3 years to implement. No, nothing out of the ordinary there, Councillor.
Thank you. Further points of clarification? No, in which case we can move to debate. Who would like to start? Councillor Parry? Oh.
Well, I think this is a really innovative application in front of us. I'm not surprised it's the first one. We are Shakespeare's country. We are a district focusing on tourism. I notice in CS24, towards the end of the section, it makes reference to facilities requiring new buildings in the countryside should, where possible, be provided within or close to a settlement, but may be justified in other locations where the facilities are required in conjunction with a particular countryside attraction and there are no suitable existing buildings or developed sites available to reuse. Well, there's certainly no suitable existing buildings, and this must be a completely unique countryside attraction. I'm particularly familiar with Camp Lane because actually on that side, the views right across the whole landscape are quite spectacular. And I can certainly see this being very viable, particularly as someone who, by fault, has to manage their daughter's holiday let down on the south coast. And the demand, particularly for smaller units that have got some unique attraction, I can see this certainly being a very good little business opportunity, but also I think it's unique, and there's a good public pub not far away, the castle at Edge Hill, so there's a place for them to go, and it is a historic location with the Battle of Edge Hill nearby. So I'd actually like to commend the applicants for their innovative imagination on bringing something new to the district, which could actually embellish and help a lot of other tourist locations, other eateries fairly nearby, and provide a good business opportunity I don't see it disturbing, but I think it could open up a wonderful countryside stay, either sort of Friday to Monday, Monday to Friday type of operation. And it would be lovely if they were able to extend occasional open days to perhaps as an educational facility for children, perhaps to come and see and experience it, because I think it's the sort of place my 2 grandsons would love to go and stay. So I have great pleasure in supporting the officer's recommendation to grant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I haven't had a proposal as of yet. I believe I had Councillor Keithley next.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I'm just going to say that I think the office has presented a very good report here, actually, weighing up clearly the objections against the innovative opportunity that's presented, and I think it's innovative. I would perhaps just push back a little bit on the objections from the parish council about the visual impact of the treehouse, as Paul's photograph showed. I think if we were to walk along that path, we'd probably see not much other than a lot of brambles and a lot of undergrowth. So I'm not sure how big an issue that's really going to be. And I also heard that the parish council felt that the wildlife would be under threat, and we heard about the deer and the rabbits. We have a lot of those where I live. But I suspect that there's an opportunity to enhance conservation in this particular area with underplanting and improvement of a canopy, providing this sort of sensory experience to staying there as well. So they've addressed issues clearly in respect of the impact and the lighting, and I'm going to say I'm pleased to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation on this, and just restate that I feel very comfortable with the. Sorry, and did. I beg your pardon. In which case, then I'm happy to second Councillor Parry's proposal to go with the officer, and I commend the officer for the quality of the report at the same time. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much. Okay, just for the clarity, we have had a proposal and a second. Councillor Harvey?
In some ways, I'm echoing some of the comments that Councillor Keithley has made in relation to the parish council. Councillor Birstall made an impassioned plea, and I don't doubt his sincerity about his concern, and his colleagues on his parish council's concern about the ecology and the environmental impact of this proposal. Sat where I'm sat with a report which says that the Cotswold National Landscape Board and the county's ecology service, neither of them have raised any objection to this. And from my perspective, I have to take that into account. And in doing so, I'm not demonstrating a pair of cloth ears to the views of the parish council. I just have to have a balanced view, taking into account all of the consultations and all of the comments that are made to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Councillor Parker next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Birstall is going to get a bit more airing again. I would like to remind members that he also spoke about what one might loosely call the wedge effect, which I know is we're here only to consider the application we have in front of us, but I did just want to air again. Councillor Parry was sounding very positive about the application, and I wonder if this was treehouse number 43, would she still have that same view? Not to say that I'm against this application in any way, but just to recognise that the concerns that parish councils have about the start of something which seems in a way pretty harmless but ends up being a bit of a misery. I think we've all had situations in our own wards where that's been the case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fleming.
Being as we're trying to promote sort of tourism and getting people into the area, I think this is fine. I'm not saying we should put a condition and limit the number of these houses to 40, so we don't get to 43. But I see no objection. I think the benefits far outweigh any harm that there might well be. So I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further? Councillor Hensheriffin.
Yes, I totally agree. I love the countryside. I was brought up in the countryside, and for people to be part of that, to experience it, I think that's marvellous. I think it's a good idea, and the officer's done a good report on it. I will be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. I suppose I'll chuck my thoughts in as well. I am supportive of this application, but I want to sort of reflect the concerns that have been raised by the parish council. I don't want them to go back and feel that they haven't been listened to or at least appreciated. Having reviewed the report and the history of this application from pre-app to where we are now, it's fairly apparent that what was originally proposed was not acceptable, and a huge amount of work has been done by the applicants to address those concerns. I feel that that is a sense of diligence which I support in responding to local representatives and communities, and that's something that I do as support as a district councillor and a parish councillor myself. So I don't want to give the impression that we as a body aren't responding to local concerns and parish councils, but it is clear that the diligence that has gone into this application that we now have in front of us is very robust, and we've, I feel, done a good job at scrutinising that tonight to our satisfaction to make sure that we're happy to support it. It appears that other members are, and I'm glad to as well. Would anyone else like to speak, or can we move to the vote? No, in which case we have a proposal to grant in line with the officer's recommendations. Can I see all those in favour, please?
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. In which case, committee resolves to grant application 22/00257/FUL. Any urgent business? In which case, this meeting is closed.